Next up, we're continuing on with the collaboration theme, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce to you, are all four of you coming up? Awesome. Okay, so I have the great pleasure of introducing to you guys today four researchers from the Unama'ki Institute of Natural Resources up in Eskasoni, Cape Breton. And I've had the pleasure of working with Tyson and Angela before. We did some Atlantic salmon smolt telemetry work up in this beautiful spot, the Jeddore Lakes of Cape Breton. And I've only just recently met Skyler and Jennifer, but I'm hoping we get to collaborate in the future. From these collaborations, I've really just taken away that I've had so much fun and I've learned so much, and I really wanted to share that with you guys all today. And so they're here to talk to you about collaboration with Mikmaq. So please welcome.
How you doing? So I guess Kim, we've seen work with Kim for a while up at the smoke wheel there. I just want to say, before we begin, I want to say something about, so I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of the Mikmaq Nation. Hold on. So from 1725 to 1761, the Mi'kmaq and British Crown entered a series of treaties that are known as the Peace and Friendship Treaties. The Mi'kmaq treaties are about friendship and diplomacy and maintaining and structuring relationships between diverse nations, Aboriginal and European. The treaties establish political order intended to prescribe nation-to-nation relations in the context of coexistence, not to surrender land or resources or as subjects of the British Crown. Traditionally, Mi'kmaq territory is referred to as Mi'kmaq and has 7 divisions. Halifax or Jibuktuk. Jibuktuk means the Great Harbor. That's Halifax. Is part of Eskiwa, Skin Dressers territory. We will touch more on Mi'kmaq in a bit. Okay, I guess we can begin. Okay, so the title of our presentation is Collaborating with Mi'kmaq, Concepts, Approaches, and Challenges. So our titles up at UINR, me, Jennifer, and Angela, we're integrative researchers. We switched from, we're research assistants, we had discussion, we wanted to be like say a biologist or something like that, but we came up with integrative researchers because we use both integrative knowledge, like 2 systems. So we gave ourselves our titles as integrative researchers. And Skyler, he's a collaboration with Skyler's title. What is it again? Community liaison with OTN. Sorry, I forgot. Okay, today we'll talk about UINR. We'll talk about Mi'kmaq people. We'll touch on two-wide scene and collaboration challenges and Apoqnmatulti'k. That's what Skyler's project is with OTN, and we'll talk about that more. So, UINR, Unama'ki Institute of Natural Resources. Sorry. What's going on? Okay, it's all good. So, Unama'ki our organization, Unama'ki Institute of Natural Resources. So Unama'ki means in Mi'kmaq, it's Cape Breton. So we're based in Cape Breton. So UINR represents Unama'kis, Cape Bretons, Mi'kmaq voice of natural resource and environmental concerns. So UINR, we're governed by, that's the next slide, right? Oh yeah, okay, sorry. So today, 50% of status Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia are currently from Mi'kmaq communities in Unama'ki. Unama'ki, we're governed by the 5 communities in Cape Breton. There's Bodlorek, there's Member 2, there's Eskasoni, there's Wa'amukuk, and there's Weriga'oma. But there's also Maligawaj, but Maligawaj is governed by all the 5 communities. That's not a community, but we consider it as a community. So UINR, our 3 goals is to provide resources for Mi'kmaq, equal participation in natural resource management in Unama'ki and its traditional territory, to strengthen Mi'kmaq research and natural resource management while maintaining our traditions and world views, to partner with other groups sharing the same desire to protect and preserve the resources for future generations. So that's our main focus when we work with other organizations. That's our main goals with UINR. So in our division, the aquatics research and stewardship, we use a lot of science paired with Mi'kmaq traditional knowledge is the key to UINR's aquatic research activities. So whatever we do with science, we always try to involve Mi'kmaq traditional knowledge. And because when you look at Mi'kmaq traditional knowledge, it's really, really important when we're moving forward in the science department there. And that's why our aquatics research and stewardship group, we got to where we're at now. So UINR's research is guided by our communities and the advice and guidance of our community elders. Also, UINR's research is guided by communities, but also from traditional fishermen. That's where we gather all our information from. Like, let's say we work with lobster or work with eel. We also get the science and biology and stuff like that. But in order for us to get all the traditional information, we have to talk to the fishermen, the Mi'kmaq fishermen, and those are the ones that are giving us the most information. So, because like when we go out, let's say I go out. I want to go get some lobster or something like that. For me, I really wouldn't know where to go. But so we're in contact with the Mi'kmaq fishermen a lot, and they let us know where they are, where to get them, and stuff like that. Like Skyler's are really, really important with UINR because he helps us a lot with traditional fishing too and Mi'kmaq knowledge. So as Mi'kmaq people, the Mikmaq Nation belong to a much larger tribal group known as the Wabanaki Confederacy, which included the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Passamaquoddy, Penobscot, and Abenaki tribes of the eastern North America. Pre-contact, the Mikmaq Nation was divided into 7 districts, each led by a district chief. Together, they made up the Mi'kmaq Grand Council, which governed by consensus over entire territory and its people. Oral history and archaeological evidence placed the Mi'kmaq in Mi'kmaq for at least 13,000 years. So the Mi'kmaq Nation was orderly, well-governed, strong, acknowledged, and successful. The traditional Mi'kmaq Grand Council continues to exist, but its authorities to govern has been largely transferred by the Indian Act to the elective chiefs and councils of each community. So we switched over from a lot of it from traditional Grand Council. Now it's chief and council that are elected from each of the communities. So this is a map of Unama'ki. So here's a map of Mi'kmaq. There are approximately 35 reserves scattered across Mi'kmaq. So 13 in Nova Scotia. Each community has its own leadership known as the Band Council, with an elected chief and council, several councillors. The nation has a population of around 170,000 people. And so next Angela will talk about Mi'kmaq rights and reconciliation part there. Responsibilities, yeah. Each of us has be good if each of us talk about each part of the presentation here.
Thank you. Okay. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the concept we have called Nedugalimk. We view the world and all that is in it as having spirit. We consider all life equal to our own and treat it with respect. We developed an intimate understanding of the relationships between the living and non-living so that each plant, animal, constellation, full moon, or red sky tells a story that guides our people so they can survive. I'm going to wait for it. It goes twice. Okay, these beliefs affect the way we treat the natural world for sustenance and survival. Animals and plants are not taken if they are not needed. All spirits are acknowledged and respected as relatives and are offered tobacco, prayer, or ceremony, or a combination when taken. No part of an animal is wasted. All parts that cannot be used are returned to the Creator. The consciousness is described by the Mi'kmaq word Nedegalimk. Mi'kmaq rights. The Aboriginal right to fish for food, social, and ceremonial needs. This was determined by the Sparrow decision in 1990. Treaty rights to fish for a moderate livelihood. That's the Marshall decision in 1999. Both rights are protected by the Constitution Act 1982. Both have conservation as a way to infringe or violate those rights. Conservation is the case made when the fish population doesn't have enough fish to sustain that population. The Mi'kmaq right to fish for food, social, and ceremonial needs and for a moderate livelihood is recognized by the Supreme Court of Canada and is protected by the Constitution Act in Canada. Here we have, this is the annual harvest for the annual St. Anne's Mission in Chapel Island in Bodlodek. And there's a feast that's done before after they clean the statue of St. Anne, a feast is held, and this is where they go to. This is from the Margaree River.
This is from the hatchery pool.
The hatchery pool.
Seine in there. As you can see, we caught a lot of brown instead of salmon. Way a lot of brown and speckled.
So they caught about 2 salmon.
We only see two salmon, large salmon, compared to like 30, 40 trout there.
Okay, Mi'kmaq responsibility can best be summed up by our elder advisor, Albert Marshall, who says, Mi'kmaq carry a great sense of responsibility. As all life is our relations, any loss of life is a loss of kin and spirit. The unintentional eradication of species is deeply connected to loss in cultural identity. Time on earth is merely borrowed from future generations. As such, the Mi'kmaq have the inherent responsibility to ensure all of nature's gifts are there for the next 7 generations. And the next 7 generations translates into 140 years. We have a slide here on the Mi'kmaq creation story. This illustration here is the creation of Glooscap and the Mi'kmaq by Gerald Glode. The image shows Glooscap creating harmony and balance with all our relations. So the Mi'kmaq creation story describes how life began for all things. This process occurred in 7 stages or levels of creation. The story tells about the relationship between the Great Spirit Creator and human beings and the environment. It also explains a philosophical view of life which is indigenous to North America. If you would like to learn more about Mi'kmaq values and beliefs, read the Mi'kmaq creation story that Stephen Augustine explains it very well. Okay, we don't have time to watch this today. It's a 13-minute long video, so I'd like to just talk about this. So the video is called "We Are All Treaty People." It illustrates the joint commitment from the Mi'kmaq community and the province of Nova Scotia to deliver treaty education to all classrooms, grades, and schools, to the general public, and to all public servants across Nova Scotia. Treaty education refers to the process of creating a greater understanding of the Mi'kmaq, of inherent Aboriginal rights, recognition of the peace and friendship treaties as historical and living agreements, and continuing the relationships between Mi'kmaq and all peoples of Nova Scotia. So here is the website. If you want to look at that, it's on YouTube. Treaty education is teaching all Canadians who Mi'kmaq people are, where we've come from, and how we can all move forward together. Next, Jennifer will talk about another of Elder Albert's concepts known as two-eyed seeing.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm going to bombard you guys with a lot of information really quickly. So I'm going to share Shelly, our supervisor, our boss's version of two-eyed seeing as an approach to collaboration. Most of these talks are 45 minutes to an hour long, so we're going to kind of cram this little section in about 20 minutes. So we'll see how that goes. So her talk draws upon peer-reviewed literature, experience, and her involvement in research partnerships such as FishWix, which is the Fisheries, Western, and Indigenous Knowledge Systems to further enhance the application of two-eyed seeing. So the focus is based on several papers, setting the stage for Collaborative Coexistence, Advancing Salmon Governance in Nova Scotia by Shelley, Denny, and Lucia Fanning, Improving the American Eel Fishery through the Incorporation of Indigenous Knowledge into Policy-Level Decision-Making in Canada by Amber Giles, Lucia, and Shelley and Tyson, A Typology of Traditional Knowledge Literature by Nicola Tulip, and Two-Eyed Seeing and Other Lessons Learned Within a Co-Learning Journey of Bringing Together Indigenous and Mainstream Knowledges and Ways of Knowing by Cheryl Bartlett and Merdina and Albert Marshall. So this overview will focus on a few things, but in detail, the idea is to provide you with an understanding of two-eyed seeing as an approach to collaboration, but we'll be doing it differently than how others present two-eyed seeing. We're going to focus on knowledge systems. I'm going to clip this on me because it's annoying to hold. Okay, there you go. So we're going to focus on knowledge systems, both Western and Indigenous knowledge, and how different cultures through their knowledge systems collide. And we'll provide guidance on how two-eyed seeing, for two-eyed seeing and ways one must prepare for this journey. So Albert's concept on two-eyed seeing is world-renowned. It refers to the gift of multiplicity. Albert doesn't tell us how to do two-eyed seeing, but he does give us guidance. So he says two-eyed seeing refers to learning to see from one eye with the strengths of Indigenous knowledges and from the other eye the strengths of Western knowledges, and using both of these eyes together for the benefit of all. Albert tells us that two-eyed seeing is about co-learning. It's about the opportunity to co-produce knowledge using the best of Western and Indigenous knowledge. But what we've learned is that it is an approach for which collaboration can and should occur when collaborating with Indigenous people like the Mi'kmaq. Two-eyed seeing is a process. Collaboration is a process as well, but two-eyed seeing is a particular type of process. It is collaboration, but through learning, and it's a way to co-produce something new. One thing that we learned is that it is contextual and is not one size fits all. What it isn't reliance on Western or Indigenous knowledge. It isn't cherry picking, prescriptive, or gap filling. Fundamental to two-eyed seeing is knowing what knowledge is, whether it is Western knowledge or Indigenous knowledge. The approach that we bring to two-eyed seeing is based on knowledge systems, not the knowledge itself. We prefer to think of knowledge as a verb. It's how we know rather than what we know. So when we refer to Indigenous knowledge, we often think of what we know, and it is to some degree. We see this in terms of local ecological knowledge, like where to find the fish or hunt, when, and the environmental cues that indicate when such an event is about to occur. But knowledge is a system, whether it is Indigenous or Western, community or institutional. The knowledge system is comprised of many things: what we know, how we practice our knowledge, how we adapt to it, and how we transmit knowledge are the elements most people are familiar with. But the values and the underlying beliefs that are also part of a knowledge system are often ignored. And this is problematic because often the values and beliefs are at odds between cultures, creating a barrier to collaboration. There are two challenges in a two-eyed seeing process from the beginning. The first is that we don't understand each other's knowledge systems. And the second is that we often don't understand our own knowledge system. So let's move to begin to examining what Western and knowledge systems are. So what is Western knowledge? Western knowledge is referred to as science-based knowledge. It is a systematic verification process to test questions from observations. Western knowledge attempts to produce empirical information that can be repeated or can be repeatedly generated and is designed to reduce bias. It consists of the scientific method of hypothesis development, design, execution, analysis, and interpretation. It is considered to be fully objective and indisputable. Current decision-making models in fisheries and government for resource management perspective is segregated and hierarchical, where science informs management. Are there values in Western science? There sure are. Western science values written transmission of knowledge. Western science values statistics. Western science values a certain way of knowing. What is Indigenous knowledge? Indigenous knowledge is somewhat more complicated. Nicole the Tulip examined the typologies of Indigenous knowledge in her literature and identified the strengths and weaknesses of the orientations, as she calls them. As 4 orientations, the first 2 in red, ecological and critical, refer to Western perceptions of Indigenous knowledge. Relational in blue is how Indigenous people describe their knowledge system. And in purple, collaborative is where we strive to be when we engage in cross-cultural collaborations where two-eyed seeing is the goal. It has no easy definition, not mutually exclusive, but they have different emphasis, each of them. So we'll go into each of them. So ecological is the first one. Ecological orientations of Indigenous knowledge is viewed as a gap filler. It supplements Western science and offers insights to ecological processes. It is recently discovered as a form of adaptive management where knowledge could contribute to sustainable management of resources. The weaknesses of this orientation are that it is extractive and reduced to observations and practices by resource managers. It neglects the living dimensions of Indigenous knowledge as socio-ecological interdependence and spiritual dimensions. Often ecological orientations are reduced to management rather than governance. The next one is critical. This orientation is embedded in uneven colonial relations of power. There are no strengths to this orientation, but it is imperative that one understands the role of power within and between knowledge systems. This perspective distorts Indigenous knowledge and reduces it to observations, resource management systems, and past and current uses. It overlooks the belief systems, values, cultural significance, social relations, and place-centered identity. Here, written knowledge is valued over experiential or oral knowledge. We often see this expressed as attempts to fit Indigenous knowledge into science, thereby reinforcing the hierarchical structure and power Western society exerts on Indigenous knowledge. Relational, so Indigenous knowledge is their relationship with the natural world. It is lived and it is what one does rather than what one knows about. It is distinct and highlighted as different from Western science. It is knowledge that is embedded in cultural frameworks that are rooted in the land and cannot be separated from the roles and responsibilities of the culture. Like other knowledge systems, it expands and contracts in relation to wider social and ecological processes. Indigenous knowledge systems in particular are driven by ethics as part of their value system, and governance is implied. In Mi'kmaq, we have the phrase Imsidnogama, which literally translated means all my relations. It's our relationship with their natural world, the living, the non-living, in the temporal scales of past, present, and future. So this underlying belief is associated with a specific set of values, which we judge what is important and how we develop a standard of behavior. It's also not easy for just anyone to understand Indigenous knowledge. It requires Western scientists and resource managers to transcend worldviews and recognize the uniqueness of Indigenous knowledge as a standalone system. It is not universal or pan-Indigenous. It is place-based knowledge that may come from many sources. It requires empowered participation at multiple levels, decision-making, technical, and managerial. The last orientation is collaborative. This is a means of empowerment for Indigenous people as opportunities to influence environmental and resource management regimes. Some of its strengths is that it is process-based. It encourages research practices that build self-governance capacity and encourages innovative, transformative, collaborative processes. It aligns ethics with goals and values, and it's an invitation for co-learning and co-production to build adaptive capacity. It does, however, require a long-term view and institutional transformation to bring different ways of knowing together, so it can get complicated. So working between knowledge systems can be challenging. First, we have different values and beliefs. What we value informs what and how we do things, and this is a source of conflict and tension. Next, add incompatible knowledge systems. Western knowledge systems are based on post-positivism. Western scientists are trained and are products of institutionalized knowledge, whether they're taught there is only one true way of knowing, that their way of knowing is objective, and it is reinforced by experts, scholars, and researchers and the institutions that they are part of. Indigenous knowledge, however, is relationship-based and can appreciate multiple ways of knowing, and that many people contribute to knowing. No one person can hold all the knowledge. Furthermore, you add the different orientations of indigenous knowledge. Western science views it, or Western society views it and treats it very different. It reduces it and or exerts power over its use and credibility. Indigenous people do not separate what they value from what they know or do. Their knowledge system is the relationship to the natural world. These almost make two-eyed seeing impossible to undertake, almost. But there are secrets, if you will, to facilitating two-eyed seeing as an approach to collaboration. The first is to recognize that it is a process. It's a collaboration, therefore people need to work together. This then becomes the opportunity for co-learning. These processes are also necessary as Indigenous knowledge systems is not something you can learn about in a book. Here, methods of Western knowledge transmission don't apply. Incorporating and working in and among knowledge systems requires interaction. It helps to know that knowledge systems will collide. If there is no conflict or tension, then there probably isn't honesty either. So expect the tension and expect the conflict. The knowledge system approach is useful in dispute resolution. It lends itself to knowing that beliefs are non-negotiable, but values are. If we work together to recognize what the most important value or values are, then we have the opportunity to collaborate and integrate knowledge systems. This is the benefit of understanding knowledge systems in the context of two-eyed seeing. It's knowing where we can bend and where we can't. Using two-eyed seeing as a tool can also be helpful. Map it out to understand perspectives. UINR did this for the salmon consultation with the Mikmaq, DFO, Parks Canada, and the province of Nova Scotia Fisheries and Aquaculture. And it was helpful to show how different each knowledge system was, and that while we agreed that conservation of salmon was important, we realized that there are different ways to achieve conservation. And these were based on beliefs and values. Obviously, having shared values as a platform from which to work is less conflict-laden, but even if you think there are no shared values, remind yourself why you're collaborating in the first place. There is a shared value, otherwise you would not be at the table. And finally, the co-production of knowledge requires that one knowledge system doesn't replace the other. Here's where knowledge systems become integrated. Sometimes there's a tendency to go back to how you know what you know, and one knowledge system gets replaced by the other. That's not the goal in two-eyed seeing. Two-eyed seeing is an agreed path forward with negotiated values, and these values guide what you do and how, and forges the way for co-production of knowledge. Two-eyed seeing is not for the faint-hearted, it's for the big-hearted. It's for those who are interested, who care, and who are willing to put in the effort and dedicated to making things happen. So Shelley made this great little diagram to kind of explain the two systems and how they're different, but where they can meet. So two-eyed seeing requires preparation. Preparation is important. We suggest 3 steps to prepare for two-eyed seeing. 1, decolonize. Decolonizing is necessary for non-Mi'kmaq and Mi'kmaq alike. Western ways are ingrained in our education system and are institutionalized. Mi'kmaq are not immune to this. Decolonizing is about recognizing that there are more than one way to view the world, and the indigenous ways through the lens of relationships. 2, explore your own knowledge system. How do you transmit, practice, and acquire knowledge? What are your values and beliefs? Whose knowledge is valid or credible? Why do you accept or reject knowledge? And finally, be open and remain open to other ways of knowing. This will cycle you back to step 1. Remind yourself to decolonize, remind yourself of your own biases about your own knowledge system, and remind yourself to have an open mind. So next we'll talk, someone is going to talk about challenges to collaboration.
Here, I'll talk about that. I probably don't need that mic. Oh, there's people watching? Okay. It's just hard holding it there, huh? So, some of the challenges we have with collaboration with UINR are, so some of the most common organizational, cultural, interpersonal barriers to collaboration include the following. So, we have a lot of lack of respect and trust with collaboration. So, as Jennifer was talking about, when we have the Unama'ki salmon group there, the way we made that is because of the fishermen have a lot of trust in us. We got a lot of information from them, traditional knowledge. So how we came about that was trust. And as years came by, that trust finally came about making that group. Also, some of the challenges with collaboration is different mindsets. Everybody has a different mindset going into a meeting. Some person may think they have more knowledge, they're way smarter than you and stuff like that. So you got to put that aside. And poor listening skills. That's one of the most important, I believe, when we have collaboration, because you don't want to be sounding too scientific when you're talking to a group of fishermen, right? You're not going to get anywhere with that. So also we have knowledge deficits, a lack of alignment around goals. So people always try to go around the goals. Internal competitiveness, information hoarding, organizational silos, and physical separation. Physical separation can be really, really hard too, because you're always emailing, you're always on a phone. But we always say, when you meet with the people, you always get way more information, you get more stuff done. Like, for example, when we work with Amy and Skyler, we have face-to-face meetings, and I find those are really, really, they improve our methods and stuff like that. So, we came about this here with UINR, the partnership tenants here. We developed this probably this year, right? Yeah. So, because we're starting to get, so given the interest in two-eyed seeing, reconciliation, and need for many projects to collaborate and partner with indigenous peoples, we created a set of 10 partnership tenants to provide guidance on how this can be achieved with UINR. These tenets are based on Mi'kmaq values and experience and lessons learned when partnering with other organizations, building on the foundation of Mi'kmaq values of equity, and nedugulim, and the principles of two-eyed seeing. The following tenets are adopted by UINR. So when we do partners, first we want to engage early. Co-development of the project is expected. We just don't want to be where, oh, we talk to a Mi'kmaq person here, that's it. We want to be involved in the project early. That's
the research questions.
Yeah, to create everything from the start. We want to be involved at the start. We just don't want to be that piece of paper where, okay, we talk to them, that's good, let's keep going. No, we want to be started at the beginning, like Apoqnmatulti'k this year. Relevance of the project is key to our participation. The project outcomes must benefit UINR or the Mi'kmaq community interest. That's one of our main goals also. It's like we want to know what are we going to get out of this project. Partners must be based on equality. This is expressed as shared decision making. How the project is developed, implemented, and communicated must be through a partnership agreement integrated within the project. So we want to be involved from the start with the decision making, all the questions and everything. The preferred project governance arrangement is a steering committee. In this form, all partners have equal voice in the project implementation and co-development of research questions, research methods, and methodologies, products, and communications. The expectation is that a terms of reference will be co-developed with an emphasis to shared decision-making, roles and responsibility clearly identified Address how data is to be used and shared in incorporation of a conflict resolution process. That's a lot of, but that's really, really important when we move forward. But also we want to be aware of like local ethics review. That's really, really important because every time we want to do a project, we have to send in an ethics application to when we're working Mi'kmaq people. Any project we do, we have to send in an ethics application to the Mi'kmaq Ethics Watch there up in CBU, right? So research must be minimal impacts to environment, including to the species studies, community involvement, environment. As example, we encourage potential partners to work with us to integrate ways, minimize harm, yet the research criteria to ensure successful project. That's really important because we have a role in UINR where we don't want to have any casualties. We don't want to do any work within species like fish species where we're gonna kill them or where we're gonna like do any harm instead of like having a successful project. So that's really important there. And also we want to have like budgets co-developed. We want to have a voice on the budgets where the money's going to be going and stuff like that. And resources to hire a community liaison have been successful in past projects. Recommend to ensure the project is supported by resources necessary for its success. That's really important, and that's where Skyler came in with OTN there. We want to have a community liaison with any project we want to do. If we could, we want to hire a community liaison person. And that community liaison we want it to be Mi'kmaq person. Especially a Mi'kmaq speaking person if we could. Co-authorizing expected on primary publications, project reports, and gray literature. Any project-related communication product, websites, social media, brochure, posters must be co-developed also. So that's our partnership tenets. That's the 10 steps we look at before we do a project with any organization we have. Might it be like government or private or... Okay, Skyler would talk about this.
Huh? Yeah. Hello, my name is Skyler Jeddore, and I'm working with the UINR and Ocean Tracking Network on this Apoqnmatulti'k project. Apoqnmatulti'k means we're helping each other, and it enables better stewardship of aquatic species through equal participation and engagement among Mi'kmaq rights holders, local knowledge holders, and academia. A co-developed approach to understanding the ecology of our land and seascapes enhances the quality of the information collected and ensures transparency and accessibility to communities that rely on healthy ecosystems. So the project is a part of the Jeddore Lakes ecosystem and the Bay of Fundy, and Ocean Tracking Network hired me to be like the community liaison and the field technician. So Apoqnmatulti'k uses the strengths of different knowledge systems or ways of knowing to document the movements and habitat use of gadak, which are the American eel, jugit'k, which are American lobster, and bunamug, which are the tomcod. And so basically, I know a lot of people who fish traditionally through many years and like generations through time, and a lot of the people have these knowledge systems where they know when an event is going to happen. Like say, for example, the smelts, when they come up to the rivers to spawn, the Mi'kmaq know that the best time to do that or to fish for them would be when the dandelions starts sprouting. Another one would be when the frost starts picking up, then we know the tomcod are going to be spawning soon. And they know when it gets hot, the lobsters will be molting in the Brador. And for the eels, it's all based on water temperature. So I don't know, maybe they didn't have any thermometers, so they would just touch the water and say, oh yes, the eels are going to come out soon. So, but yeah, so what we did was I contacted local fishermen to help me gather samples like lobsters and eels in the Brador Lakes. It's kind of challenging with the timing we had because the eels are most numerous when it just gets warm enough for them to leave. So that would be the best time to fish. So we had a little challenge where the water temperature was like 24 to 28 degrees Celsius, and that wasn't really too healthy for the eels. But we got 18 eels. It was 18. Yeah, 18 eels tagged with Jof, and we have like 33 lobsters tagged. But yeah, these studies inform the Mi'kmaq and community leadership regarding aquatic resource and oceans management. So, oh yes, yeah, and all the partners involved are the UINR, the Mi'kmaq Conservation Group, minus the Ocean Tracking Network, Acadia University, the DFO, Dalhousie, and NSERC. And so this is the stuff that I did starting when I started. We deployed some receivers in the Brador Lakes, and we have the gate system here with the VR2s, the auto release, and the VPS array is over here. Total right there would be 36 receivers, and we have 4 in total at the Iona Bridge, 2 north, 2 south, 1 outside the Benacadie Pond, 6 around Eskizoni in the Barishwa Ponds, and we have 2 at the East Bay Sandbar. And we did that in 2 days, and they're sitting down. And we caught 20 of our lobsters are going to be caught within the VPS, 20 more around the Iona Bridge. And so we tested the lobsters this summer because the local knowledge holders told us that the eels molt in the summer. So we went and sampled them out in East Bay. We also deployed the CTD within the VPS array. We checked for the shell thickness and all that, and we had a little workshop on surgeries with Dr. Chris Harvey Clark, and we tagged 11 eels that day. Well, 10 actually, because one of the eels was a little injured from something. But anyways, here's a picture of what we were doing in the lab. So the EFWC they loaned us their facility to hold the fish and the lobsters in like a holding tank. And we did the lobsters. There's my local traditional fisherman. His name is Blair, or Jof. And here's a tagged lobster that we recaptured this summer. And another thing we did, I didn't add any, because I didn't have any pictures on my phone. I had some technical difficulties, but we also planted receivers underground at 2 locations to see and track where the lobsters go during the winter. So we have 30 centimeters of mud. So we dig out the substrate using a post hole digger, and we placed 3 receivers. I think they're VR9s, I believe, at 3 different depths, right under the mud, 6 inches. I don't know how many centimeters that was, but and at the very bottom, so we have 30 centimeters of receivers where we can detect the fish, how far they go, and we just want to listen to the fish while they're under the mud. And that's pretty much it.
You guys have any questions? So nobody had any questions? Yeah.
Thank you for a great presentation.
Yeah.
Most people in this room are involved with tracking stuff.
Yeah.
And the time scale of tracking studies presents a particular set of challenges about data sharing and information sharing, because it's such a long-term process. It often takes years, as you guys know, to get that information, to process it all. And I was wondering, that can sometimes cause conflicts with stakeholders or non-scientists that expect information at a much higher rate. And I was wondering if you had any tips or ideas or strategies about how to deal with that.
That's where our partnership tenants agreement came from. Because it seems like all the time they just want to, seems like you don't want to rush stuff. That's the reason why we developed is sometimes we get projects where they're already 50% done of the project or 50% developed, then they try to bring you in, right? So some of the challenges are, that's where we said we want to be at the start, right? Like, for example, you said you're the scholars, they want, or like the stakeholders, I'm trying to say that. Stakeholders would want it to be rushed up, right? And so the part where we get to that stakeholders is where we wanted to be involved at the start. And if we're going to be involved at the start, we're going to have to take a much slower process. So, I guess they have their own process of what's going to happen. But that's a really big challenge, and we've been through that. And that's the reason why we developed it sometimes. Because there's some, back in the day, there were some projects where we just rushed into it and we didn't get anything. No information or nothing from it.
One of the key things for us is we communicating, from the very beginning, communicate, we're going to do this project, we're going to collect this knowledge, but it might take us a couple years before we finish and get everything and get results to you. So as long as, in our experience, as long as we keep people informed through the whole way and don't just leave them hanging to the end, they're pretty understanding and they'll accommodate us. But effective communication and just laying it out and not it's lying, I guess would be, you're saying we're going to get all this information this year and then maybe we'll get something to you in the fall. You probably won't be able to analyze it all then. So, and if you're expected to produce something and there are delays, because that often happens, just let people know. It's all about trust and honesty and stuff and communicating. That's building that relationship and making sure people know what's going on, so they don't get mad or whatever.
Can you describe some of the particular work that you did in the planning process before you started the project with Broder Lakes that was particular to the fact that it's a collaboration?
Which project?
Skyler's project.
The one with Skyler's
Oh, there's one with Skyler?
Right on.
Can you repeat the question for the mic?
Can you repeat the question? For me?
What was particular about the planning process that incorporated all of the values and tenets that you were just talking about?
So the question was, what were the planning process before collaboration, how we got to where we are. It took a long time. Our Apoqnmatulti'k project is probably one of our biggest collaborations that we've done. And a lot of everybody involved never did anything so big like that, because most of them are here in Halifax and we're based in Cape Breton. It took a lot of meetings and getting to know each other, learning expectations from each other. It was kind of a little bumpy road in the beginning, but we got it all sorted out and everything's all great now and everybody's happy. But it took a lot of time, and getting just like face-to-face meetings is the most effective, and sitting down at the table and figuring out like what we need to do and how we're going to do it, and making sure that you're respecting what each people's knowledge system is and what they want out of the project. So I think that's good enough.
Yeah, that's how we came about our research tenants here, product from this project.
It's one of them. There's other ones that led us to that too.
Any other questions? Yeah.
So last night we had at the panel, the term that was phrased was parachute researcher. And I gave a little bit of thought to that. I thought a lot of times if you are an early career researcher, you're brought in on a project that's already been established and potentially doesn't have the best relationship or working out of province. There may not even be tenants. How do you approach that initial meeting or that initial kind of face-to-face where you are that researcher parachuting in on a project that is like, I know that we work with these people or have worked with them in the past, but I haven't met anyone.
Go out and meet them. If you're new, you got, and if you want it to be successful and you want the people involved to help you out and give you what the information you need, then go out and talk to them. Like, hi, I'm new here. I'm going to be doing this. I'm only here for a little bit of time or whatever. I'm going to get the results, and they'll come back to you. I'm not going to take your info and run away and never come back. But yeah, just go out and talk to people. That's all.
Yeah,
Build that relationship, and
yeah. So when you start talking to people, you get more trust from them, right? So when you start collaborating, you want to get that trust at the start first. So once you get that trust, then your avenues start opening up elsewhere. So I think that's where you're going with that question, right? So when you start off new, you want to meet people right away and introduce yourself, what you want to do. You don't want to leave anything in the gray area where you want to be more open, for me to say that. Any other questions? No?